Public hearing on amending section 1716-190 of the municipal code regarding home occupations. J, resolution to set public hearing on amending section 1716-030 of the municipal code regarding accessory buildings and permitted accessory uses. K, request for proposals for audit services, 3-year contract. L, resolution to set public hearing for second amendment for fiscal year 2023. M, tax abatement 202 St. Lawrence Street, David and Piper Hobbs, new construction. N, tax abatement 108 Highland Drive number 4, Quandle Investment Properties, new construction. O, tax abatement 909 Pleasant Avenue, Nancy Allring, rehabilitation.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Olson, seconded by Chisel. Any discussion?
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was curious about discussion on the accessory buildings, that the ADU public hearing. I know John's encouraged us several times to raise any, concerns or things that we might like to see differently prior to setting the public hearing, so we don't have to republish and redo the calendar. So I was mostly curious if others on the council, I know that they had this discussion at the planning and zoning level. Is it best just to pull it off and talk about it afterwards? All right, then I'm going to request that it be pulled so we can discuss it.
And which ones are those?
J.
Actually, and the resolution setting the agenda, the public hearing includes both of those.
Correct.
So
Same
they should
resolution.
both come off, right? I mean, if we're pulling that resolution off, it'd be both those items that come off, or
It's one resolution that addresses accessory buildings and accessory uses. So that one resolution,
okay,
you're talking about ADU specific.
yeah,
The other resolution's home occupation.
right. I thought they were both set by the same resolution. There's two different resolutions in the
those
packet.
were
Okay,
set by
thank
two
you,
different.
thank you,
So it's just J.
thank you.
Okay.
I had a question about N. Mainly, we had at a council meeting inquired about Quandal's work on the apartment building that was built 2 years ago and the drawing and how the drawing had greenery and such that had not been taken care of. I'm curious if we have followed up with that.
So our big issue on that, the short answer is yes, but the big issue is when do you call the site plan complete? Because
Right.
this last phase of the building hasn't occurred yet, so the site plan itself isn't complete.
Okay, so is this the Highland Drive one, that is complete, according to the,
Correct, but the site plan that was approved was for 3-4 units at a time,
okay,
or 3 fourplexes, if you will. So 1 fourplex is done. The second fourplex has 2 now. 2 out of the 4 done. So the site plan as a whole isn't complete until that 3rd fourplex is done. And at that time is when all the site plan is supposed to be complete.
okay.
Emily, are you talking about the one out by KDC or are you talking about the one on
No,
Lloyd?
on Lloyd. No, I'm talking about the one on Lloyd as
Yeah,
I'm thinking about.
That's what I thought. Or Lawrence, yeah.
Okay,
Didn't hear the comment.
It's the same as the St. Lawrence development.
right. So I guess my question then is, the Highland Drive is similar to that, right? And what this tax abatement that we would approve, he's already built the units and the greenery is there for Highland Drive.
The greenery is not necessarily tied to the building. That's the issue, is that the building itself isn't, it's a component of the site plan. So the overall site plan isn't complete until the last unit is constructed.
But they can apply for tax abatement even before the entire site plan is?
Correct, because the individual units are then sold off.
Mm.
That's part of the, I don't want to call it issue, but the way with doing, for example, a preliminary plat that requires all the infrastructure and then you approve the final plat at the same time, that creates individual parcels. I can now sell my individual parcel without any infrastructure in the ground. That's part of the same issue.
Okay, and these were abatements that were done prior to our new process.
No, it's very much still part of the process. It's a struggle with that process.
Okay,
Is there some way that we
Can we-
can not issue habitation permits until all the work is done on the site plan?
we would have to change, we'd have to do some code changes.
Because without some sort of tool, it seems like it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to be
It's a
able to,
stick after the fact, basically. Yeah.
I guess it's a little bit, I mean, we could say trees, sidewalks, whatever it is. I guess I have a hard time wanting to award tax abatement to projects that to me are not complete according to the site plan
Mhm.
that we saw.
Okay, so what is the council?
But that is not
Review
currently
for
in our
this.
code. It's not, we don't have that
Right. And the-
expressly.
And the revitalization plan itself does represent, does state zoning conformance.
Yeah, but this wouldn't be zoning.
It might fall under the site plan section of, we could, I don't want to say stretch, that sounds bad, but because it would fall under the section on.
Yeah, it was in the site plan.
Yeah,
that we
it
approved.
Falls under the title. thing. I would recommend pulling this off
Okay,
Okay,
and, so you don't have to necessarily discuss it immediately after the consent agenda. If we want to put that at the end, that would actually give time for John to maybe do a little checking during the rest of the council meeting. Does that sound acceptable to council?
Yes. Sure.
okay, so the motion was made and seconded, and we are taking off I and N.
J and N.
J and N, okay.
and I think I've expressed my concerns for N in case it winds up at the end of the meeting and I wind up having to leave, but that is my concern.
Okay,
And then when do you want J discussed? Do you want to do
We can
that
have
one
it-
immediately or?
Mayor's prerogative.
maybe we could do it, not at the end, but while she's still here.
You want to do J immediately?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, roll call.
Olson,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carried, and we'll go to J, resolution to set public hearing on amending section 17.16.030 of the municipal code regarding access buildings and permitted accessory uses.
I move the item.
Want to-
Is that the right, set public hearing? I mean, I'm just
Okay.
moving it for discussion.
Well, if you want to have possible amendments, so I would suggest having a discussion.
That's fine with me. All right, that's
But I think
great.
you were moving it, so we could discuss.
I was just,
right?
Good.
that's fine. As long as you guys are okay with discussion before we have something, that's fine with me. That's great.
Yep.
We do it a lot, so.
All right,
I'm happy. I just wanted to raise just a question about it. And I know that this was raised by some planning and zoning commission members too. I'm thrilled about permitting ADUs city, in our residential districts. I think it's going to be terrific for solving a lot of problems in terms of kinds of housing we're missing. It'll allow people to age in place. It'll allow people to move, their mother-in-law in close, but maybe not too close. I don't, that's up to every family what that means. I think this is terrific. But when I drive around Decorah, I notice in lots of cases, it seems as if when someone built a house back in the 40s or whenever it was, they also purchased the lot next to them and turned that into a pretty large side yard. And I can get the appeal of that, but it may be that some current property owners would appreciate the opportunity to construct the ADU, not in their backyard, but in that side yard space. And this proposed language from planning and zoning doesn't permit that. And I would like to see us consider permitting people to build in that side yard space, provided that the newly constructed ADU conforms to setbacks that would, apply to any other house being built there. If you look at the code that they did suggest, they said in the case of corner lots, so if you have a house on the corner, you can have a rear yard ADU as long as it conformed to that side streets setback requirements. So I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see the logic of that extended to houses along the middle of a block that they could build a conforming ADU as long as it didn't, encroach on the setback requirements we've established as a city.
Can I ask a question about
Yeah.
that? So if a person essentially owns two lots, what then, how does that change if they build an accessory unit as opposed to another house, right? Wouldn't that then have different implications for property tax?
I think that Travis and John might be better suited to weigh in on this. There are almost certainly cases in which maybe something was originally 2 lots, or it was 1.5 lot, or it was a large irregular lot, but it's still platted as a single lot. So you couldn't build a second dwelling on it, I think, without getting a new plat. Is that right? Or subdividing it or something?
For most purposes, yes, because you can only divide a lot twice before it requires a replatting. So if, let's say I own a lot, a parcel, I want to differentiate between parcel and lot. So if I own a parcel, skipped one parcel, neighbor owns the next one, and we split that middle parcel, that is treated as a lot. So it is an extension of my parcel, and we only concern ourselves with the exterior boundaries. However, if we want to split again, said parcel that's already been split one time, that's now going to create a replat of the area.
Oh, yeah, no, what I'm asking is not a split, but actually a full site, right? So I can think of 2 locations and actually one just came up too, right? If someone is essentially building 2 houses on one lot, if the lot is big enough, right? Can one be the accessory dwelling, and does that impact property tax? Or because they have now 2 houses essentially in one lot area, their property taxes would raise equivalently?
So if it's an actual second house, as in does not meet the definition of an accessory structure,
Uh-huh.
it would have to be in either R2 or R3. You
Right.
have to have the appropriate zoning to be done. And as far as tax implications go, that's going to be the assessor to determine.
Okay.
can only have
But-
one homestead, so, I mean, there would, only one of them could be claimed as a residence. I mean, one of them,
So
yeah, I don't know how the assessor would look at, if it was 2 full houses. Suppose you could have a second family living in that other house. And-
Okay, I have a question for Travis.
well, wait, I just want to finish what you're thinking. I mean, so then you not pay property taxes on that second house is what I'm asking?
No, you pay. you do,
Okay.
you do.
Okay,
If anything, it'd be more than the payment on the original.
okay, all right. Cause I'm thinking, there's an area on Washington Street where there's a house for sale and a full lot right next to it, and I can see those 2 things becoming one. And then someone putting up another house there, but maybe they would then sell it off.
So that is R3 zoning, so that they could do, as long as they meet the rest of the zoning requirements, they could put apartments on it.
Okay, my question is there enough questions not to pass this and to do some more work on it?
Yeah, if council, if the majority of council doesn't see this as adequate or wants to make the change to add side yard as well as rear yard, I would encourage doing that now. I know John certainly encourages it doing now, because then when the public hearing's held, the public's been put on notice what that requirement's going to.
I guess my question is, do we want more discussion before you set what the public hearing?
If the council wants to do a motion and a second and a vote, that's the easiest way to know whether for supported or not.
Okay,
I'm not quite ready to be comfortable with side yard, but I could be convinced, and maybe I'm.
so you'd be ready to set a public hearing then?
As it is now, but I'm not sure about Steve's side yard.
I don't want my concerns to derail this process to the point, because I think this would make things better for the city of Decorah. And I don't want to let what I think would be even better still be the enemy of this. I'm if it's not pretty decisive that the council is like, the logic that we're applying to corner lots should extend to lots in the middle, because, we're allowing them to put houses right on us, or ADUs right on a street. As long as it conforms to setback requirements on the side street. I just feel like we should extend that same logic to people who have a side lot, to property owners who want to construct an ADU next to them on their property. I think they should have the freedom to do it if they want to.
Okay,
If we do accept this as written and somebody wants to construct in a side yard, they can still go through adjustment for a variance, correct?
They could.
So it would be the exception rather than the rule.
Correct.
I think I would support accepting this as is so that we move the process forward. We watch the Board of Adjustment and see if there are a lot of variance requests on ADUs. But I think maybe it's better to start the process, let the ADU process and education process begin, especially with summer construction season or whatnot. You know, you can put up a smaller structure.
So you're making that a motion?
Yes, I would make a motion that we accept as is.
Okay. Motion made by Hadley,
I'll second.
seconded by Neil. Any further discussion?
I'm just going to respond to Ross's comments. I appreciate the desire to keep this going and that, you know, we don't want to delay this interminably, but the Board of Adjustments is, you know, shouldn't be sort of making exceptions that we want to happen. They should be for truly exceptional circumstances.
Which is why I would suggest that we follow Steve's suggestion of doing the side yards. I would support that now as opposed to having I wish we would.
Okay, so first of all, we have a motion and a second. So you can decide on this if you want this to go through.
I thought I was discussing.
Are you discussing the variation of what they're asking or to put a public hearing out there?
I'd like to hear from the council members who haven't spoken since we've
Okay.
seemed to have a 2-2.
Okay.
I'm in agreement with Steve on that. I think we don't want to leave a gray area out there that is going to be confusing to lead to things down the road. I think we should address all that before we put it in place.
Burke or Randy, do you want to weigh in or not? Mhm.
I mean, if you got setback regulations, I don't see where too many side yards are gonna be impacted.
You mean you don't see too many places where ADUs could be built in side yards given setback regulations?
On the side, yeah.
I think there's more lots where that would be possible than there are lots where this regulation would permit ADUs. I think doing it this way would open up a lot of new lots.
I think we'd be surprised how many are out there actually.
I'm happy passing it this way today. At some point, I may ask the council to take a deeper look at this.
Okay, so you're clear on what you're voting for. Roll call?
Hadley,
Aye.
Neil,
Aye.
Olson,
No,
Luce,
No,
Zittergruen,
No,
You got a few more.
Johnson,
aye.
Chisel.
Aye.
Sorry, my cheat sheet didn't flow quite right there.
According to, I believe it passed. Okay. Now, did you want to do the N now, or do you want to do it?
Did you have enough time?
Okay,
I haven't found anything
No.
that would say that we have to require them to abide by the site plan so far. I mean, it's basically, did they complete the improvements? Did they otherwise comply with the plan?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dramatically change where we've been until we've actually made it official that we're going to. I just think it's something that we need to look at in terms of our tax abatement plan, that we should, it is our only strategy for really ensuring that the site plan actually looks like the site plan. And I think there have been too many times historically, I mean, think about sidewalks where there should have been, right? This is exactly what I'm thinking, right? Is that if the site plan has it on there before we give an abatement, we really should be saying like, it's got to look like your site plan and then you can have your abatement. It's just one more mechanism. I don't feel like it would be fair to hold it up now because we haven't set the precedents, but I would like us to consider that notice is given that we should change the practice of how we do this if we can.
okay, so I'm looking for a motion and a second for N.
I move the item.
second.
Motion made by Zittergruen, seconded by Olson. Any further discussion?
Travis, are you aware of any other communities that do have better sort of sticks in place to ensure conformance with site plans?
This is gonna be one I'd have to look out for some other communities because this is a multiple family dwelling type specific issue. So I'd have to do a little bit more research.
I'd be interested if there's something that we can do. I mean, the tax abatement thing, I'd set that precedent if that's our only option, but I mean, if there's something else that we can do or something that I'd like to see us figure out a way to make sure people conform to what they say they're going to do. And I'm thinking right now about the quick start, you know, we got a lot of concessions from and worked hard, you know, in terms of getting that plan better. But I guess what I'm hearing tonight is that we don't really have a recourse if they just don't do what they said they would do. That seems terrible.
It's my big stick after the fact is you take them to court and force the hand. So that's,
When,
if they fail to make the site plan improvements, that's what we'd have to do.
when we researched building code and we're looking at building inspection and whatnot, we did have discussions about implementing a habitation permit concept for residential strictly because of that. Because, you know, you can turn a construction loan into a home loan. But we wanted to be able to have that as a documented stopgap for habitation, because then I think it's a conversion of the loan thing too. Because you can't convert your loan until you have a habitation permit, I believe. So it was a good stick. So I guess if other council members are concerned about it, I would ask staff to look into it and see what we can do.
Agree,
All right.
agree.
Thanks, Travis.
Okay, roll call.
All right. Zittergren.
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal.
Motion carried. Conduct public hearing on the plan specifications, form of contract and taking bids for the Decorah 2023 alley improvement project. Can you give some information on that, please?
Yes, so I'll lump the background. 6 is the public hearing, 7 is the potential actionable item. So the public hearing is required by law for a project with an engineer's estimate above the public bidding threshold. But this project includes the alley south of Center Avenue between Riverside and Second Street. The project includes grading 2 inches sub base, 4 inches of asphalt, approximately 10 feet wide, and 2 foot wide concrete drainage flumes where necessary. Project will also include concrete alley approaches and sidewalk where necessary. City received 1 bid for the proposed project. The engineer's estimate was $131,510, and the low bid was Skyline with a bid of $117,361.74. Difference is about 11% below the engineer's estimate.
Okay, so I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this item? Hearing seen none, I'll close the public hearing. Consider a resolution approving the plan specifications, form of the contract, and taking bids for the Decorah 2023 alley improvement project.
Lose, so moves.
Hadley will second.
Motion made by Lou, seconded by Hadley. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Zittergren.
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel.
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Motion carried. Conduct public hearing on the fiscal year 2023 amendment. You want to give some background on that, Carrie?
Yes, so we have the amendment that we're doing, the first amendment of the fiscal year 2023. And again, this is just giving spending power. It does not necessarily mean that we'll be spending it. What the department heads are finding with ordering products that we've had discussions before, we're not sure which fiscal year we're going to actually get the product. And so that's where some of these are. Some are a correction of wages. The insurance, the liability insurance, property insurance was quite a bit up. Let's see. PD, the training, having to do more training with applicants. And with the library's memorial funds. And then we also will be, as you saw in the consent agenda, be doing a second amendment.
And to be clear, this is the budget for the current year that
Current
we
fiscal
are
year.
in.
Current
Okay.
fiscal year.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this item? Hearing, seeing none. I'll close the public hearing. Consider resolution approving the fiscal year 2023 amendment.
Lewis would so move.
Second.
Motion made by Lou, seconded by Olson. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call?
Luce,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergren.
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Consider resolution awarding the Decorah Municipal Airport corporate hangar with attached terminal building project. Can you give us information on that, please?
Yes, so 10, 11, and 12 are gonna kind of blend into each other. And the outcome on 10 is gonna greatly impact what 11 and 12 look like. So the airport corporate hangar and attached terminal building project bid letting was held on Friday. Initial engineers estimates when we started this was 1.88 million. With, again, large portion of this being funded by federal and state grants, whether it's through FAA or DOT. With a recent re-estimation of 2.33 million. But the one and only bid came in from Wix Construction for the amount of 2.74 million. So, and that is the construction costs alone. Budgeted for this project along with engineering. We don't have the funds to cover this project. The local match, based on what we had budgeted, would have been about 345,000 total through, again, 2 fiscal years. If you remember, where the estimate came at this point would actually be 857,494 over that initial estimate. So that would have to be made up by either local match or other grant funding that we'd have to try and secure.
How much was that again?
857,000 and change,
Gotcha.
I see McClure's on Zoom.
and also in attendance. So Dave Jones, I was gonna have make him speak because he drove all the way up here.
Good. Well, let's make him speak.
Okay. He can-
46% overestimate. That's, I mean, even in a post-COVID wacky world, that seems egregious.
It does. And
Just state your name and who you're with.
Dave Jones with McClure Engineering.
Thank you.
We've had several other hangar projects and those have all come in at the same overage. And for some reason, well, 2 reasons I know of specifically is the price of steel has greatly increased and the price of fiberglass, which means insulation, has greatly increased. And so I just want to make sure that, we did make every effort. We contacted over between 40 and 50 directly contacted or between 40 and 50 contractors to make sure that they knew about the project. We actually asked FAA to extend the bid letting by 2 weeks, which they agreed to. And then we spent 1 day directly calling contractors and seeing their interest. There was a lot of interest in the project, but mainly as subcontractors, in which they provided quotes to Wix Construction for the project. One other prime bidder that we thought was going to bid out of Wisconsin was Hammer. I can't remember the first name, but he decided at the last minute to withdraw his bid because of federal wage rates and Buy American, and he couldn't meet the DBE requirement. So we only got the 1 bid. The one option, I did speak with FAA today. They said, and with Wix Construction, they would be willing to reduce the cost, the bid price. But it would take elimination of a lot of the project, to make sure we still conform to FAA requirements. they would have to get rid of the terminal portion completely and it would be doing just the hangar. They could probably get down to the original budget, maybe just a little bit over. And FAA was okay with that. They would still support it with the grants. DOT said most likely they would do that, but he would have to get that confirmed with the commission, the DOT commission, to make sure that was okay because of the scope change. So that's one option if you wanted to move forward with this. Try to get within budget, but it would only be the hangar portion of the project.
Thank you.
So to go along with that, that is one option as Dave presented. The other option being that, and staff recommendation is rejecting the bid, and we would then convert the grants, the existing grants, to what's called a design only. They would cover the engineering costs, architectural costs thus far for the building, and then we would essentially close that out and potentially discuss this in the future, whether it's in the same location or potentially airport commission has talked about potentially moving it to a different location. Not the airport.
Okay, you had me there for a second.
Oh, that's interesting.
I raised some concerns about this project just in terms of its scope in the previous meeting. Is there a smaller version of it? This is adding 3,400 square feet of finished space to the city footprint. Is there value to be found in reducing the footprint significantly? Is that a possibility, or is there something requiring us to build a hangar this big?
The hangar size is pretty much set at a minimum 80 by 80. And then the reason for that is to accommodate a King Air 300. You need that size of hangar, and that would be the largest aircraft that would you need to accommodate in the hangar.
Since the King Air is privately hangared, correct?
Is privately hangared, but yeah, this is the FBO hangar. This is where
Right, but I'm saying, oh, you're the FBO for overhauls or whatnot. Is that why?
maintenance, annuals,
yeah.
everything. Yep. In order to service the aircraft, it would have to be in the hangar.
And that matches what I was told last week, but I just thought while you were here, I would make sure to get it right from the horse's mouth. So thank you.
Yeah, as far as the terminal portion, that size could vary a little bit. It was set at a pretty minimum footprint to start with, 30 by 60 just for the terminal. And the floor plan layout was really scaled back from what we had originally started with too. So it really was nothing fancy at all, just trying to get by with the minimum amount to start with.
I want to thank you for the work that you've done on behalf of the city. I'm sure this has been more than frustrating on your end as it is on our end.
Yeah. Thanks.
Lucid move to reject the bid.
Second.
Yeah.
Correct.
Motion made by Luz, seconded by Zittergruen to reject the bid and convert to the design only.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Roll call?
Aye.
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 Okay, and this, we continue with number 11 and 2, right? Okay,
11, yep, because that was for the task order from the Florida Service Project Manager.
okay. I consider, how about 12?
For
Okay. So we move on to 13. Consider approval of Iowa Governmental Health Care Plan as new insurance carrier. Have a background on that, please?
Yes, I have met with 3 individuals one local, two out of town. The one is our current broker, which is through Group Services, Alara Group. Denise Ballard with IGHCP, which is on the agenda. And then I also met with Brian Hinker. I believe that with the city, with our size, that we would be best off going with the trust. That would spread the risk. And so that is a way of protecting us from large increases, not only this year, but for the years to come. This would be a July 1 start date with them. And we could save roughly around 160,000 compared to what we have right now. All the brokers that I met with can save us money, but this plan was the one that when I looked at it, it was a close plan that would do very little in changing what the employees experience in their plans.
Also the longest tenure of
Yes,
the,
they've been around since 2005, and I think that's important.
Lewis would move, changing to Iowa Governmental Health Care Plan as our new carrier.
Neil, second.
Motion made by Luce, seconded by Neil. Discussion.
Carrie, I said this to you privately, and I'm going to say it publicly as well. I'm extraordinarily pleased that we're competitively bidding this out, and I think it should be a regular practice for the city. These insurance costs, especially as they're raising, it's really important to make sure that we're finding value. I know that sometimes our staff aren't eager about changing insurance plans. I know I don't like it when it happens to my family. But you know, if there's $160,000 in savings, that's a direct tax cut because we levy directly for these benefits. So finding these savings means people are paying lower taxes when these plans go into effect. And I'm really excited about that savings for the people of Decorah. And I'm grateful to you for doing the legwork of seeking out plans. And the other thing I said to you, and I'll say again publicly, is I do always, you know, as we're considering our experience with this provider, you know, going forward, I hope that we're, you know, always, you know, we don't get content and we just keep renewing year after year. I'd like to give other providers a chance regularly as part of our practices, especially, you know, I'd like to shop local if possible. Some of the concerns that have been brought to me about, you know, this particular plan, you know, it seems as if you feel pretty confident that people aren't going to experience denials of coverage or the sense that they're being denied coverage. That's accurate?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I will never say that no one's ever gonna experience a denial, but that can happen with the insurance that we're dealing with right now. With what we've discussed, after I spoke with the other two brokers, I reached back out to IGHCP and we discussed the concerns. And I do feel confident that with enough education to our employees and with their customer service, that they wouldn't have issues.
I just want to commend Carrie too on the hard work she did of putting all this information together. I know I just went on Medicare myself and we just had to change our insurance policy and it's very, very confusing when you start getting into the nuts and bolts and weeds of this stuff. So I commend you on your hard work for doing this and the savings of $160,000. That's well done.
Any further discussion? Comment? Roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Neil,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel, Olson,
Aye.
Zergrun.
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider approval of site plan for Viking Mountain Tool Works. Can you give us a background on that?
Yes, so a site plan's been submitted for Viking Mountain Tool Works to build a wholesale distribution facility up in the Decorah Business Park on Sweet Parkway Road. Staff review of the site plan found 8 items for consideration, of which, all 8 of these were recommended by P and Z as contingencies for approval. Item 1, applicant's not the current property owner, should be owner prior to starting. 2, site plan dimensions do not match a plat from current property owner. My understanding is that property owner has agreed to expanding that, so that should be easily met. Item 3, site gradings not in conjunction with the regional stormwater plan submitted. All building runoff needs to be directed towards the regional detention basin. Item 4, example of building detail given but not finalized. Applicant should provide building height, shape, use, and architectural theme. Item 5, site plan does not provide details on necessary street improvements. Applicant would need to submit right-of-way work permit prior to construction with the necessary information. As primarily curb cuts where that would occur. 6, van accessible parking stall shall be 11 feet wide with a 5-foot wide aisle per SUDAS. Item 7, sidewalk plan specifies 3.5-inch concrete, needs to be 4. Sidewalk is also shown extending on a private property due to a conflict with the existing utility, so applicant needs to provide a sidewalk easement to the city. And item 8, regional stormwater basin has been designed by Decorah Jobs for the area. As long as the runoff is directed to the regional basin, stormwater requirements are met. But the applicant's contractor will need to sign as a co-applicant to the existing NPDES general permit number 2 that we currently hold. Again, P and Z has reviewed proposed site plan, recommends approval with all the contingencies listed.
Move to approve with all the contingencies that are listed on it.
Lewis was second.
Motion made by Olson, seconded by Luce. Discussion.
I'm grateful for the investment in our community. This is good news for Decorah. I had a quick question about the sidewalk easement. Is there like how is there a utility place there in a place that almost certainly was going to be home to a sidewalk at some point? Like, is there a way that we can make sure that doesn't happen?
Go for it,
Jeremy, I'm sorry if if you want to take that, if you just want to email me that answer, that's fine too.
No,
I just,
That's a fair question. So I think we're much more diligent now with right-of-way permitting. And one of the ways we do that is through locates. So we review all the locates to see what type of work. I wasn't here when that was installed. I can't speak to how it was placed there. But today, we just met with another provider up there recently, and we had them stake the handholds, had them stake the pedestals, so we know it's not in the way. So going forward, I think we have a pretty good system in place to prevent that. This is one that just slipped through the cracks.
no, that's what I want to hear, that there's a system in place going forward. That's wonderful. Thanks.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Stephanie Fromm for all her hard work she put in to get this Viking Tool Works worked out and get this done. Thanks.
When do you start shouting?
Any,
Woohoo!
any further discussion? Roll call.
Olson,
Hi.
Luce,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neil,
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carried. Consider approval of preliminary plat for Kratz subdivision. Give us a background on that and report from P and Z.
Sure. So the proposed Kratz subdivisions outside the city limits, but within 2-mile boundary. So city code 1604-160, also in conformance with state code. Long and the short is it allows the cities, not allows, but state code also says that cities zoning ordinance applies in that 2-mile zone around the city limits. So our code allows for the Planning and Zoning Commission and the council to provide for deviations from our zoning code. But in discussions with John, so planning and zoning's conversation and recommended action included that it be contingent upon item 4 listed in the letter, which included that the stormwater management plan be done in conformance with the site plan and implemented. And they wanted to note that items that curb and gutter, street lights, street lines, street signs, and sidewalks be required if and when annexed into the city limits. There were originally 9 items noted on the letter, with items 5 through 9 being removed to provide a little bit more clarity because those were more notations than requirements. So the 4 items still listed. Under 1, streets do not meet city requirements, however, indicate as private. Within that, cul-de-sacs are limited to 600 feet, are shown as over 1,000 feet. Curb and gutters required for public streets. No street lights are shown, no street signs are shown. And then item 2, sidewalks are shown, but noted to be installed if annexed into the city limits afterwards. Item 3, lots are to be on their own well and septic, not connected to public utilities. And item 4, no stormwater management plan was submitted. However, stormwater easements are indicated. So again, P and Z's recommendation was approval of site plan contingent on the stormwater management plan being implemented and those others afterwards, if and when annexed. And so in conversation with John, the way our code reads that if council agrees with that deviation, then it would be forwarded on to the county for their consideration. And the county would have to have their own discussion on whether it meets their requirements or not. Any deviation from that, it would have to go back to P and Z for consideration.
Just
So-
that's just a side note first. And the fact that there's most likely a lot of discussion that may come up with this. The discussion should maybe be before a motion is made. And then motion made and seconded.
Thank
I'm
you.
asking for that because of the confusion and
Yep.
all of the things that are involved with it.
I don't know who wants to go first, but I guess my biggest concern is that streets not meeting city requirements. It's hard to think about something 2 miles right near the city where the streets themselves don't meet our requirements. So I'm not sure about the cul-de-sacs. I get that they would do curb and gutter. I'm not sure why there aren't streetlights, but I don't know if Jeremy, you have something to say about the cul-de-sacs and city requirements, but that is what would be my red flag there.
So I'm gonna defer cul-de-sacs to emergency services. That's really one of the critical components there. I will just add that, you know, we do have private streets and a private street very close to this development that technically does not meet city standards and therefore is not accepted by the city and is managed privately. So that's
That's
the one on
Stapleton.
Stapleton there. It
Stapleton
doesn't
Drive,
have
yeah.
curb and gutter. It's asphalt, but no curb
But
and
it's
gutter.
annexed into the city.
Right,
And we service them with water and sewer.
correct. I don't know if Travis, you had a chance to talk to Chief about the cul-de-sacs at all.
No, I brought it up to him, but we weren't able to connect to talk about fire. And then the question was posed on PD. And I said, well, that's irrelevant because it's county. So it's going to be sheriff's department or sheriff's office that would respond.
And if they were annexed into the city and they wanted water and sewer, would we be required to provide it?
More or less.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I would never recommend the city annex this in after the fact.
You mean because of the way it's being built?
Well, just in general, so this plat along with many others, I'm
Yeah.
not trying to just exclude this one. You know, there's a reason the 2 mile buffer around cities is put in state code. It's because it's very common for people to want to live right on the edge of the city limits without they want to enjoy the benefits of
Right.
what the city offers without paying city property taxes. So you build right on that fringe. That's why this is in there so that you can go ahead and build. And then if and when the city chooses to expand, you meet those requirements. I would not recommend this be one annexed in the city limits because this, again, not specific development, but this type of development, lots larger than 1 acre in size. They have a very large street frontage costs. If and when we were to install public infrastructure, water, sewer, it's a lot of linear feet of pipe in the ground for a single family home. These don't pencil out. So
That's my number,
It's
that's my number one.
That's
Again,
helpful.
that's my number one, no. And my number two is stormwater management. Because we've done so much work on stormwater management outside of the basin and inside the basin. And not having curb and gutter and not having, having giant lots and it's just, it doesn't pass it doesn't pass the ability to be annexed in my head ever. And it just seems like if we give a nod to this pending other things, it's just setting a bad precedence. Especially given the topography of the area right in the watershed. It just seems like a bad idea to me,
Yeah, but it's outside the city limits.
but it's inside the watershed.
It's also
But
in the
but
2
I'm
mile.
not,
I
I'm
mean,
not
it's
going to argue about the watershed issue. I think that is an issue to be dealt with. However, the other requirements of, street size and sidewalks and cul-de-sac length, if it meets the Winnebago County subdivision requirements, then I don't know that we have a lot to say about it.
I think that is why there is that. I mean, yeah, I agree. If it was outside of the 2 miles,
We feel like you can just impose city standards in the 2 mile limit willy-nilly for this
No,
particular
it's
development.
it's codified.
no, I mean, I think that's why I think that 2 mile limit makes me really want to think about the area that could be annexed in the future. I mean, in thinking about the future growth of Decorah, and therefore, why would we say this, if we start to let developments come around in our 2 mile area, we won't have anywhere to expand into, right? Because we want to take on these developments. Like this development would not be in the interest of Decorah as built, right? So we either rebuild a development that's been there, or we say, you got to build to city code if you're gonna, or at least enough that we can make it manageable if we do annex. This seems to me to be a project that isn't manageable. We would never want to annex it, but it's yet within 2 miles of Decorah.
Yeah, I think if I was speaking for the developer, I would respond to Ross's concerns with, well, just don't annex it, right? We don't want you to. Or Travis is saying he wouldn't recommend that it be annexed. They'd say, good, we don't want to be annexed. I'm sure that that's what their response would be. But when we make decisions on things like this, we have to be thoughtful about Decorah in 50 and 100 years.
Right.
And we don't know, we don't know what the next 50 or 100 years will bring. It could very well be that Decorah needs to grow south. And if there is an unsustainable, from a fiscal standpoint, development, kind of blocking contiguous growth by the city, as we grow to meet demand, then that creates a really unfortunate system to the people who sits in these chairs in a generation, or a situation to the people who sit in these chairs in a generation or two. We've been hamstrung by past councils too often for me to want to do it to a future council.
I guess I'm thinking along the same lines, for future councils down the road. I mean, I'm afraid we're gonna run into a similar situation like we did with Bruning Edition, where we allowed them to build 60% of the homes up there, and now we can't put sidewalks in because they got mature trees and things like that. So I think we should try to avoid a similar situation like that should a future council want to annex them.
I will say, though, that this, to me, makes me wonder if we should take a look at our subdivision code and say, is it too onerous? I mean, is it reasonable that we need, every single thing that we require in our subdivision code for every single place? I mean, clearly these are people who, are interested in housing that doesn't have all those features, and maybe we need to do some reflecting on that too.
Well, I think the other thing to do is, this is all still on this is all pencil and paperwork right now. There's an opportunity for the landowners to build something different, and build something that could be annexed and have value and have smaller lot sizes to accommodate more houses in the 2 mile. Because if more people want to live close to Decorah and have the close attractions and support of the city, we could support that. And I think a no might bring them back to the drawing. Maybe that brings them back to the drawing board.
I would just point out one thing, since it's in the county and septic's required, there are minimum acreage sizes. It's 1 acre. Is that correct? So they have to be 1 acre in size to have a septic system. So that is part of the reason. And developer's rep is here, can answer that, but just keep that in mind that to meet the county sanitary requirements, you have to have an acre lot.
How far are they from city water?
City water. and
City
sewer.
water sewer, is that area? Close to
Sewer
services?
is, they're both relatively close. We would have some concerns with water and water pressure, given we're at the top of the hill. So that would be a question better answered by Todd, who had to take off because of an alarm at a existing water system. But anything's possible, right? But I think our concern would be water, and do we have enough pressure to feed homes in this area?
And you wouldn't have to have the same layout, right? I mean, you could make them to accommodate the septic.
In terms
So
of the
if-
lot
if it-
size?
Yeah, well, I mean, if the lot size has to be an acre, but couldn't it be go backwards as opposed to on the frontage? Big wide houses, right?
I'm not familiar with county zoning code to know what their flexibility is in terms, I just know that the acre minimum is for septic.
Just a reminder to the council, we usually work with positive motion and second, and then the vote. So
Correct. I know John would echo that. Even if regardless of how your vote is gonna be, motion in the affirmative because a failed negative does not mean it passes.
Got it. So
Yeah.
make a positive, but if you don't want to vote for it, you vote no.
Correct.
I'd like more discussion on it. I don't know. I don't feel ready to vote. The acre requirement bugs me, but I know it's a requirement then, right? So
That's what I'm saying, you know, we're meddling in someone else's code. And, you know, if they're building, if it works for the Winnebago County, then, and I'm not so sure it's not an okay thing because it's outside our jurisdiction.
But I don't buy that. I understand the acre being uncomfortable. I don't think it's outside our jurisdiction. That's why the whole 2 mile thing is there. I mean, if it was outside our jurisdiction, it wouldn't be here in front of us. We are tasked with thinking about the future growth of Decorah. That is what we should be considering, not what's best for Winnebago County, but actually what is best in terms of thinking about Decorah's growth in the future. So while I understand that, it is troubling to think about both emergency managements, our emergency situations in cul-de-sacs, but also as we think about expanding and growing, that we would sort of have this problematic development to the south.
second question. Is there an option not to vote on this?
Yeah,
Not bring
you
it,
can table. This
so
does
you can
not
just
have a,
table it, okay?
does not have a time limit.
Well, I prefer to table until I can hear from the fire chief. I mean, that to me seems like a really important consideration if that's a possible concern from public safety. And maybe this would give people who wanted to attempt, you know, I don't know, like to educate us on what we're missing here, you know, like I think more discussion might be nice, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen right here. So
Are you making a motion?
so, well, I mean, is council okay with tabling this so we can
Because
at least hear from fire?
One more question
Yeah.
before we do that. Where does this sit with the Winnebago County, planning and zoning? I mean, have they approved it? Have
They
they?
have not. So their staff review is also listed in the packet there as well. So they send us a list of what it meets their requirements or not. We take consideration on whether it meets the city requirements and then pass whatever vote comes out of this council onto the county for their consideration.
has the county rejected it in the past?
Actually, I can't tell you. So this is the second time the council's discussed it, with the first time it not passing. I don't believe it was even taken up at the county level, the first time.
Has Parks and Rec weighed in on this? Has the board, I mean, given this thing's proximity to the trail, I know it's not on the city part of the trail, but
Correct. So P and Z brought that up. It is not city limits. That's not city responsibility for the trail. That would be a county responsibility as well.
thanks.
I'm fine tabling it. I wouldn't vote on it tonight.
And you need a motion to,
Right. Can we move to table until we can hear from the chief on this? I mean, would that just put it back on the agenda fairly quickly? Is that,
Set out the next meeting and
I'd at least like that information. So I move to table until we've had an opportunity to hear more from public safety.
I'll second.
motion made by Zittergrund, seconded by Olson to table. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Zittergrund.
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel.
Aye.
Motion carried, and we'll look forward, please get please check with whoever you need for your references to figure out what you may be thinking about when it comes back to the table.
Yeah, I guess I'm not, I'm just asking staff to make sure that we've got an official recommendation from public safety on, whether we should be concerned about this or not.
Okay. Consider approval of C3 Design, Sean Brown, 120 East Water Street, Blazing Star.
Hadley will make a motion to approve the C3 design as submitted and compliment them on their beautiful package of information.
Neil, second.
Motion made by Hadley, seconded by Neil for approval. Any further discussion?
Just a terrific color palette. I'm really excited about this. I
And-
also wanted to thank the Historical
Yes, I was
Preservation
gonna say.
Committee, whose name I'm not getting right, but really appreciate your weighing in on this.
Let's go to Decorah Historic Preservation Commission. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Hadley,
Aye.
Neil,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Zittergren.
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel.
Motion carried. Discussion on food trucks. Can I give a background on that,
Let's see.
please?
Sure. So no action is needed on this item. This is listed on the agenda as discussion, so no action can actually happen. Previous practice of the city through two provisions of our city code is that food trucks are prohibited on city-owned property, streets, and right-of-way. Applicable code sections are included in the Dropbox, which talk about issuance of a peddler's permit as well as another permit from the chief of police for being on a street. There have been a few instances of food trucks being parked on city streets recently, as well as participating in the farmer's market as vendors. So staff seeks direction from council on providing language in city code related specifically to food trucks, because this seems to be a gray area from what practice has been and what we have in code. So this is meant to be a discussion of council, so that staff knows we need to provide some clarity in city code. So which way do you want the clarity?
I'd like to see the current code enforced, but I'd like there to be a permitting process so that we can allow exceptions for things like the farmer's market. So if the farmer's market wanted to have food trucks, which is part of the festival atmosphere, it's part of, what makes a farmer's market special is walking around with a cup of coffee and some popcorn. They could, get a special event, that could be part of their event permit. That'd be my preference.
John, what's the status of that city parking lot when we lease it, if you will, to the farmer's market? Is it still city space, or is the farmer's market's jurisdiction and therefore under their purview?
I think it's under, well, I think it's probably a little bit gray, but they provide management of the vendors that are there, and you could have a vendor that's there that doesn't have a food truck. I mean, it's a farmer's market. A lot of people sell food there. So I think it would be good, something good to clarify whether or not the farmer's market under their lease has authority to permit, so to speak, food truck. They collect fees, I think, from the vendors that are there. So they need to be able to regulate who they have there. And I think you're just going to have to decide, does that include the ability to have food trucks or not? Arguably right now, maybe it does, because they allow other food vendors there.
Yeah, and that's where the clarity would be good, because the lease as it reads talks about the leasee as an organization of vendors conducting biweekly farmers markets for the sale of agricultural produce, meats, and other goods. Well, other goods. What is that? So,
Food truck stuff.
right, and if that's what council wants it to read,
I
we
can
need clarity.
I can think of other situations in which it might be useful to have a special event permit that specifically authorizes the sales of prepared foods. I know someone was talking about organizing an event at Pulpit Rock Campground, and, because of this part in our code, they were told, we can't get a food truck parked there as part of a, big celebration or something. So I think it would be a useful mechanism to have a way for the council to authorize this to happen. But I don't think it should be permitted by right.
But just to be clear, before I leave, you're thinking that food trucks in general should have a permit issued by the city to be anywhere within city property, but that special events could get an exception where they could come at a special event without a permit. So if they were like not a common food truck, I'm thinking the Moo Mobile or vendors during Nordic Fest could come, but they didn't necessarily need a city issued permit for regular ongoing use in the city.
Yeah, or just make it part of it and make it only happen during special events, because I can't think of too many other times when I'd want them to be parked on city property. But for special events, it seems like it, just as part of your event application, check a box if you anticipate that this will involve a food truck.
But we do have food trucks specifically on city property currently that are there regularly and ongoing.
And right now, I think Travis is concerned because he doesn't think technically that's permissible.
Right.
And-
Okay, so my two
You might
cents
wanna hear from
before we go
Travis
is,
on that.
I would like it to be permissible through some type of permitting process that food trucks should be allowed in city on our property, but with a permit. But exceptions made for special events so that during Nordic Fest, every truck doesn't have to get a permit. That
I
would,
would
that would
think-
be what I would like to see.
What
I
about,
would-
go ahead, Steve. What about things like Harrington corn setting up on Casey's up there like that? Is that a permissible?
Private property.
Okay, that's-
What if? Because Nordic Fest is a street closure. So the question really becomes, who controls something during a permitted event, John?
It depends upon your special event application form and what we allow in there. And I don't know all the details with Nordic Fest, but basically we authorize the Nordic Fest board to control designated areas of Water Street and some of the adjacent blocks and other parts in town and in the past parking lots. And I think we basically give them the authority to regulate that.
Right. And then, so if we use that as somewhat of a precedent and we look at the farmer's market where it's a lease and a closure of a parking lot during X time to X time, is that similar enough?
Well, I think you just, again, I just think council should clarify it. If that's what you want to do is basically authorize somebody who has a lease or some other type of special event application, and maybe that should be part of the application specifically. Does this permit authorize just a blanket food trucks approved by the applicant? If the applicant should have control over what vendors are there, right? You don't want them to have a special event permit and then some other entity comes in that they don't want there.
But the same thing could happen, someone could pirate a food truck on any open private parking lot within the event grounds. And if you wanted to, have a food truck and on, a bank parking lot or a grocery store parking lot, or when they could do that during Nordic Fest.
And it happened last year, actually.
Yeah.
I would like to see that the farmer's market lease allow them as the organization to be in charge of the food truck, whatever vendors they set up for being at the farmer's market. I don't think we need to micromanage that. I think the farmer's market can be in charge of that.
So-called goods allowable food truck for that.
Right.
Have you looked at other cities as far as this is concerned? And are you comfortable looking to see what clarification you could bring forth that we could at least take a look at?
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff out there across
Okay.
the board, from, a flat out prohibition to the point of permitting for, I don't want to call it free for all, but permitted among any street in the city limits. Granted, you have a permit. Usually there's associated fees specific to food trucks. You can designate individual areas. So let's say you wanted to allow just the lower fairway lot next to the farmer's market area for food trucks. We'll call it the food truck lot, whatever. You could designate specific areas. You could designate prohibited areas such as can't be within an existing, within 200 feet of an existing food retailer or things like that. So there's any number of options out there. It's really what does council want for Decorah?
Well, it might be that we would need something to take a look at to see you've heard some ideas from the council. So we have an idea of what that would look like.
I've heard two ideas that I have written down.
Okay.
One from Emily was wanted to see permits and allowable for special events. And I heard Luce say concretely farmer's market. That's the two I have jotted down.
I thought I said right at the beginning that I just thought that it should be part of our special event process, that there should be that should be part of our permitting process where, people, if they get their special event fee, indicate whether they intend for there to be food trucks.
So special event only.
Well, and I feel it, yeah. And if you just want to have a food truck parked at, in lower water or whatever, at any old random Tuesday afternoon, you could file a special event application for that. I like that because we already have a system in place. It wouldn't be involving a whole new permitting scheme or, adding additional layers of paperwork to current festival or special event holders.
So you're saying,
Yeah, just add a tick
Under-
box.
under your scenario, Ross's birthday, parks a taco truck in front of his house. That's a special event.
I mean, it'd be one I would vote against.
Okay.
And one that I would tell, well, unless I was invited, and one that I would, no,
The
no,
window faced out to the street.
right.
Yeah.
One that I would, encourage staff to use their judgment as they already do when they're assessing special events. Is this reasonable? Does this serve the interest of the city? And, obviously there's going to be, but
Right, but
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, we could turn it
it's
down.
that. Yeah.
And
If
then
you ask to
yeah.
close the street in front of your house for your birthday party, you'll get a similar response.
Okay. Okay, so you understand kind of what.
Now I've
you're
got
talking-
three
That's right.
written down,
That's right.
I guess, I'm
of which none of the three are the same.
I'm mildly
Oh,
concerned
that's
about
okay.
if someone has a special event, say, a Thursday night, trivia, and then somebody decides that they want to, set up their truck in the proximity of that event to capitalize on the traffic. Is that allowable, or is that, who says no to that?
Right now, if it would be a no, and based on the others listed so far, Emily talked about a permit specific for food trucks across the city. So under what she was discussing, if they had a permit already applied, then they could go ahead and park there. Unless, again, as part of those examples, if it's prohibited within 200 feet of a food establishment, I mean, there's a number of,
Mhm.
restaurants. Why couldn't I think of that word? Number of restaurants downtown. So that could be troublesome there. Anyway, they could do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Or they could ask for a special permit to be next to trivia.
They
Is
could,
that what Steve's idea was?
I mean, I would just say, yeah, if they want to file a special event permit and say we want to have a food truck on a city parking space right next to trivia, I feel like we could exercise our, discretion and say no to that. I think for the most part, people wouldn't ask because they can just park on a private lot somewhere.
John, you said,
Yeah.
Well, that discretion part, I mean, I think we need a little bit more guidance in the ordinance or the administrative procedures about that because
the applicant should know what would
Yeah.
result in a denial.
they need to have prior notice.
Well, the other thing is that there are a lot of city parking spots that would be pretty prime for someone to set up a food truck all the time. I mean, and how do you say no to that other than to prohibit them, almost outright on city
It's maybe
parking?
that special event. I mean, because it's a date range and it's a permit fee. I mean, just because Steve's gonna vote against my taco truck at my birthday, doesn't mean that the idea is not sound.
And I think you do have to have proper guidance, and I think we have to look to see
About this.
what the ramifications are one way or another. So if you could bring back something or suggest for further discussion.
But if you're keeping tally, you can put me on
Put
with
you
the
on
special
super
event
good,
permit,
special event.
because I think that provides enough structure.
And then
Because it's a time frame, it's a location, and it's registration, so it's enforceable and we're collecting enough maybe to offset overhead.
John, are you concerned that we don't currently have a whole lot of guidance or direction or specific ordinances detailing what kinds of special events we would permit and what kinds we wouldn't?
I guess that it hasn't come to my attention that there's been anybody that's felt like they've been denied a special event permit where a similarly situated person was granted one, or where there's maybe dueling special events next to each other. I mean, that's kind of what I'm concerned about. Are we saying, okay, we already have one special event on Water Street, so we can't have any other special events at the same time on Water Street?
competing food special event permits.
Yeah, compete. Yeah, right,
Same
exactly.
Parking stops.
Yep, yep, or right next to each other. I mean, maybe it's okay, maybe it's not, but when you say, I guess that discretion part is, Travis might have one opinion on whether that's okay, and somebody else might have another.
Sure.
And again, it's just trying to provide prior notice to applicants about what the rules of the road are. And
I
what
feel
we're-
I feel as if the current status quo, I think it seems to be okay. And not the current lack of any sort of process or, formal guidance or whatever, but to the extent possible, I just like as little additional hurdles to people providing the kinds of great services that they're currently providing. So if staff can come up with a way to accommodate that, I think it's nice to have food trucks at the farmer's market. I think it's nice. I think it'd be maybe nice to have other food trucks that don't directly compete with, downtown businesses elsewhere. I don't think it's bad for adjoining restaurants when there's a festival that has 200 people there. I think it's good for them. And so I guess maybe bring us a menu of options and we'll be able to pick one that seems best, huh?
Oh, dude,
You could give it all fun names, like.
And we'll
Okay.
cross off the ones like it's out of.
all right.
Left.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to bringing back something, some kind of guidance. of sorts. Okay,
We got 3 weeks till the next one, right?
all right. Let's see.
Recipe for success.
All right.
Recipe for success.
Okay, Travis, you have something to report?
Yes, so police chief search, we are now at 6 applicants, so wanted to let council know that. We are looking at mid next week is the deadline for submission. That looking to formalize those dates on we're straddling the line of, do we need 2 interviews, 1 interview? When it comes to applications, but looking at the week before, let's see, Chief, you retire on the 30th, right? That's the Friday. So the 23rd, 24th is what we're looking at for the potential final interview dates. Does that
May.
look of June?
Oh, June.
So June 23 and 24. Those would be the final, so I would say those are the most imperative. It'd be a very similar structure to, I believe it was the same process when the chief was hired, but also a similar process to when I was hired here. Friday would be a more outward public, also meeting with the officers. And then Saturday morning would be the bulk of the interview process.
Hadley is out of town.
Hadley's out of town.
Yep.
June 24th out.
It'd make things tough at home.
It would
Real
make-
tough.
Okay.
That'd be a big ask in my fam.
So how about the alternative is, the date the chief retires and the subsequent day.
That's
Because otherwise we get into the 4th of July after that, and then we get into,
What days are those?
that would be the 30th
And
and
what
the
Day of
31st.
the week are those?
Friday
And
and
the
Saturday.
first.
Or the first, excuse me. Thank you.
What about the weekend before? Is that just too
Nordic
soon?
Fest. Well,
That's
same
June,
as-
that's June.
No, this is.
Nordic Fest.
That's June, that's correct. Yeah, like 22nd, 23rd.
Maybe 16th, 17th would be the weekend before.
Either of those work for me,
Either of
30th
those.
and 1st and 16th and 2nd.
All three of those would work for me.
What are the three?
16, 17, 23, 24,
Okay.
30.
16, 17 works for me.
Only
30 and 1.
That's June.
30 and 1 works less well.
you were 16th, 17th and 30, 31. It would put a strain on the middle, right? Steven?
Yeah, I mean, Randy said he couldn't do it. Ross can't do it.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just Lisa's planning a trip, but it doesn't have to happen.
So 23, 24 from the layout.
30 and 1 are out for me.
That leaves 16, 17.
16, 17, that's all for me, yeah.
That'll work.
Well, 23, 24 would work for me, doesn't work for somebody else. So 16, 17 is it. Unless we go into July
Well,
after the
we
4th.
may call a
Okay.
work session then specific to the police chief search where we'll screen candidates. Maybe even as early as next week, even though we can start that screening process. That'll give us a jump on it.
They're due at the end of next week.
I think mid next week, yeah, the
26th.
26 or
I think
24th.
I think it said 26 on the website.
And so I understand correctly, you're hoping that the timing also is, it'd be better to do while chief is still around. Is that?
Well, and I wasn't trying to time it the same week as the chief
Yeah, for sure.
retirement, but just the timing of such was either the week before or that just seemed to be the window where we were landing based on everything. But I will touch base with Jeff Keeler and it sounds like 16th, 17th is the best weekend to make this work.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else you have?
Let's see. This week is bike to work week, which I did ride my bike to work this morning. I drove it home for lunch and rode it home for lunch and then drove the truck back because I was done after that.
And did we get a photo, op?
No. I look like a circus bear on a bicycle, but
I did see it. I thought it was really quite.
I drove my daughter to school today on the tag along, so that was fun. Road. As well as, so at the next council meeting, there will be a closed session because performance evaluations, we do those in June leading up to the start of the next fiscal year. And so there will be a closed session on at least one, but I'm assuming two. You'll have yours on there as well. So there will be closed sessions on there. I certainly don't anticipate anyone's getting fired, but that's why there's closed sessions.
Anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
Carrie? Anything from the three at the table? Okay. Kirk,
Nothing, Mayor.
Ross,
Just a heads up, I'm going to be bringing a dark sky ordinance regarding light pollution to the council. I've got a couple other council people who are going to be supportive. It's in conjunction with the revamping of our city streetlights. We're looking at end of life for a lot of our fixtures. And so we want to make sure that any new fixturing respects dark sky strategies and tries to avoid light pollution and protect our natural resources. So I've got a couple of new quotes that I'm passing on to Jeremy, and then the ordinance will be coming kind of at the same time.
Steve Zittiger.
Yep, Decorah Jobs has a meeting tomorrow where they're going to have a discussion about, housing and if they can be involved in being part of Decorah's solution to the housing issues we're facing. Kudos to the city manager for driving his bike to work today. It saves us money on our infrastructure. It's better for the environment. It makes Decorah a pleasanter place and a safer place. So thanks for the example. I think Decorah drivers in general are great around bikers. And I don't think that's true everywhere. It's something that I really appreciate about our community. I had a terrible experience with someone the other day who tried to drive me off the road and very well almost succeeded. But I think that was very much the exception. I bike a lot, and for the most part, people are very good. And I just want to commend that and thank everyone.
You know, if you're bigger, they're less likely to hit you because you leave a dent.
Wasn't able to attend the SMID meeting for May, but I have nothing further.
Kirsten,
June 27th at 6 o'clock here in City Hall, we'll be having a public meeting. It's the Decorah Drinking Water Protection Team and Greg Brennan from the Iowa Geologic Survey from the University of Iowa will be here in attendance. And he'll be talking about the wellhead protection area. They just completed a study on that back in February. And he'll be presenting the results of that.
what time is that?
It is at 6 o'clock on June 27th, right here at City Hall. And we'll be having a utility meeting on July 17th. Greg can be at that one. I'll try to schedule one for 5 o'clock on the July 17th. He can be on Zoom for that one to present it to the utility committee. And that'll be it.
Randy?
I have nothing this evening, Mayor.
Okay. Anything else? Move for adjournment?